Well, good evening, my beauties. It is Bullhorn Betty. We are covering the case of Nancy Guthrie. She disappeared from her home in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona, and has not been seen or heard from since. And this afternoon, we were supposed to go over on the new channel. Mama Bullhorn came by and visited. And I am getting ready for tomorrow morning, which many of you guys know. I am going to be at my county. They're going to be doing some type of memorial for Carol Feltz, the commissioner that lost her life in my county. She was a friend of mine, and it's just been very, very, hard, as well as dealing with a breaking news case and a major event out of state. So it's been quite challenging to do everything that we've needed to do. However, with that being said, give me just a second. There we go. However, with that being said, we weren't able to do our crime stories side of things. Hey guys, Bullhorn Betty, I hope you guys are doing well. It's nice to see you. Come on in. Oh, sorry, Delilah. She popped up behind me. She's right behind my head. It's nice to see you all. We've been covering the case of Nancy Guthrie, and as you guys know, Savannah, Annie, and Tommaso were out front. Hello. How are you doing, SIO? It's nice to see you. Hold on just a second. Okay, if everybody could hold off on text messages, that'd be really great for right now. It's nice to see you guys. So we were talking about Tommaso and Annie and Savannah and what that was all about. You could hear the sobbing, the massive sobbing of whatever, them going out there. I read some comments. Some of the comments I wasn't really happy with, because they were being they were condemning them, basically, like, why haven't you been out here earlier? It's a memorial in front of their mother's house, and there has been nothing but oodles and oodles of cameras out front of the house. So I don't think that they were wanting to make a spectacle of what was going on with their mom. As you can imagine, this has to be a very deeply personal situation that happened to this family. Deeply personal. Guys, I hope you go ahead and hit that thumbs up button on your way in or your way out. Oh, I forgot to change some things. Sorry about that. I might already have some settings updated, but I had seen that and I knew I missed our lunchtime or lunch hour. So I decided to go ahead and go live now and just go over what we've learned. So if you guys have been following the Nancy Guthrie case, oh, hello, CISO. It's nice to see you. She's never going... Oh, Mo, I know. It sure does feel like that, doesn't it? It sure does feel like that. Hi, Casey. It's nice to see you. My heart's broken for this because I don't know what we're truly dealing with here, because on one hand, you want to, based on just what we saw in the video, you kind of want to believe that this person was an amateur. But can't both be true? Can't it be an amateur and a hired person? I mean, aren't there, we've heard of stranger things before. This doesn't seem too strange to me, but I feel like this, I think we all kind of feel a tidbit of this being kind of more personal than not personal. I feel like there's a personal connection here somewhere, but I'm not quite sure what that personal connection is to the case. But just thinking of a grandma being ripped from her freaking home out of her bed, that terrifies me. And looking at this case as a whole and researching those videos, like there was like videos. Do you suspect? Mo, I'm kind of back. Not the immediate family, not the siblings, not her children. I'm kind of past that at this point. I don't think it's them. But is there somebody else that's jaded in the family? That's possible. I think every family has their, squabbles. I think that every, I don't know how to answer that, because I feel like this is ultra personal in a sense, but I don't know why I'm getting that sense, but it has a lot to do with not just this person going and ripping this elderly woman out of her bed, but it also goes down or has to do with how comfortable he seemed to be moving about in front of the home. That really got me. I don't know why it got me, but I didn't catch it at first. But then somebody had brought it up like in a Facebook post or something like that. And it clicked, and it's like, this guy is acting very nonchalant. I mean, he doesn't know whether this is triggering somebody, or how it dings, like to tell you got movement at a camera or this, that, and the other. You would think that instead of him moving around in front of a doorbell camera, you would think that he would have immediately ripped it off the bracket or something, or just got out of the way, but to be constantly moving back, because every time you move back and forth, it does, it triggers another, notification to the phone. So that's the part I don't understand, is how in the world they were able to do all that. Steals nothing. Exactly. What about the former student? What former student, Deanna? Did I miss something? It seems funny the last people to see her was her daughter and son-in-law. Remember, they ordered her Uber to them. Well, that we don't know what the purpose of that was, whether that was common ground or not. And I think that there are a lot of things. Think about it. I mean, in any case where there was a burglary after somebody's been dropped off, that last person that dropped them off is not necessarily the person that came in. Now, granted, this is a little strange, but because the FBI, Pima County, in conjunction with the FBI, came out and cleared these family. I've been doing this a while, and every case that I've covered where law enforcement has come out to clear somebody, they never went back and recharged them. Now, I remember back in the day, somebody would say they were cleared, and that's why they don't do it, and then have to charge that person. But that was years and years ago, and that was before all this stuff. I have to think that after they've been in this house, they've already done their forensics in that house. They did a canvassing of the neighborhood, not once, but twice. And the fact that Annie and Tommaso's house is more open, like you can see the front, the side, and everything, in my opinion, on that house, better from the road than you can like their mother, Nancy's house, which has all that shrubbery and cactuses and stuff out there that kind of give her privacy. You don't really have all of that at Tommaso and Annie's house. And I would think that with the cameras, like the doorbell cameras and other things that are out there, that they would have picked up movement from their house. Even if they weren't thinking about their cameras or their, avoiding cameras and stuff like that. From my understanding, the car has to pass from Annie's house several cameras just to even go 500 feet from their driveway. So I can't imagine them being able to sneak out of their neighborhood without being picked up on one of those neighbor cameras. At minimum, picking up just the headlights and then backing out of their driveway. So I think there are a lot of things that led law enforcement to believe that it's not them. But I also believe if we keep beating a dead horse, we're going to be missing the big picture. We feel that we need to start taking the stuff that we know to be true, right? We know that this person obviously was there at the house multiple times. Was this person somebody known to that resident, or somebody that was hired to go to that resident, or somebody that just fell on that resident by dumb luck, right? There's three options here of what brought this guy to that location. Now, if you go down these avenues, it does feel very personal, but what does that personal mean? Does that personal mean that it's like an old employee? Does that personal mean maybe a distant relative that feels jaded? Does that personal mean that this person is a stalker of Savannah Guthrie and just wanted to hurt Savannah because she's not paying this guy attention? What does that mean? I think that if we take the core things that are pointing us to Tommaso, and listening to what is pointing us to Tommaso and start applying that to other people, we might come across a person of interest or a suspect. Because in my opinion, when law enforcement dismisses them or says, hey, they're cleared, right? Let's say that they say they're cleared. They're no longer a person of interest. They've cooperated fully. We know for a fact that they're cleared. Until some new information comes up, we should take that and move it to the side and sit it there for a little bit and go back to the drawing board, removing them. And that's kind of what I did. And so when I look at this case, it still feels ultra familiar. So why does it feel that way? For me, I feel like this person here was a hired hit. I feel like this was not anything. This is going to blow our mind. This is going to blow our mind much like the Bryan Kohberger case did. And what do I mean by that? Do I think this person is a serial killer? To be honest with you, I don't know. Okay? Honestly, I really don't know. But in Bryan Kohberger, nobody even thought of him. Nobody even thought. I remember sitting, and I say this all the time, so much so that when I talk about the case, I feel like a broken record. I remember that Olivia and I were staying in Washington, the state of Washington, because it was right over the border. But it was cheaper for us because we were on a budget. You know, we're going out there to cover this case. It cost us a massive amount of money to go halfway across the country and stay there for weeks at a time. So we were partnering together and splitting the cost so we could cover the case. Part of that budgeting was staying in Washington State because it was just cheaper. Well, we were sitting at this local coffee house, and I remember I was sitting, this wasn't the first time we were at the coffee house, but for whatever reason, I didn't notice that Washington State University was literally across the street. And I'm like, we had already heard about potential, college or university rivalries being, this is a pretty crazy rivalry, if true, but we heard about it. And of course I look up and there's that sign. Just this day, I happened to see this sign. This day was December 1st. Okay, if you guys know anything about the story, they had just identified Bryan Kohberger's Elantra the night before and put him on the list the first time that they ever heard of a Bryan Kohberger, just the evening before. Just the evening before. And I'm standing out in front of Washington State University wondering, is it possible, right? So this was a left field person that felt ultra personal, ultra jaded. It looked pretty personal and pretty angry. Everything that we know about it being personal, this guy didn't even know these people. Bryan Kohberger was not friends with Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, or Maddie. He wasn't. So it was a left field guy that, even though this felt very, very, very personal, you know what I'm saying? Very, very, very personal. And there you have it. So I think that this is going to be have a Bryan Kohberger effect. I really do. I think the person that it ultimately is it's going to make us gasp. Bryan Kohberger made us gasp. Made us gasp. It's nice to see you all. Who do we have in here? Hello, hello, hello. Mo, Jacob. It's nice to see you. Deanna. James, it's nice to see you. Mo, thank you. Thank you for your comments. But they knew when she would be back. That's not true. I don't agree with that, Mo. Because it happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. Who's not home at 2 o'clock in the morning? What elderly person do you not know that's at home at 2 o'clock in the morning? I don't know too many 84-year-olds, partying it down at the local pub. I'm just saying. But this happened at 1:47 in the morning. I have to say, if it was somebody from that house, I would have to think that they would have done this a lot earlier. Sorry, I got chapped lips from Tennessee. Sorry, guys. They hurt so bad. Every time I smile, they split. So please don't mind me. I know this is kind of gross, but my lips hurt. My lips hurt. 84-year-old woman that going missing, doesn't smell. I agree it doesn't smell right, but we have to look in my opinion, this is just my opinion, if law enforcement is saying that they're cleared, we need to start looking elsewhere. Not because they said they're cleared, it's because that's a dead end. At this point, it's a dead end. Until something else rears its ugly head, it's a dead end. So having to assume all these things takes us out of Occam's razor. I like to stay kind of in Occam's razor. That means applying the less amount of assumptions. Every time we say, well, what if he did this and what if he did that? That's assuming something to make the story fit for your narrative. And I don't like that. I like facts. I like those facts and building theories based upon those facts and the facts of the case from legitimate sources. The law enforcement and the FBI says these 6 people are cleared of any wrongdoing. So, I mean, if we keep going down this road, we know we're going to be 100% wrong. So why are we continuing to go down this road? I think we're painting ourselves into a box by constantly looking at Annie and Tommaso. And I don't like being in the box. I like being on the outside of the box because I like thinking outside of the box, right? And I think by looking at them and only them, we're enclosing ourselves in a very tight box and putting a lot of eggs in one basket when we're already being informed we're probably putting the eggs in the wrong basket. Now, if we feel that it's family, what other family is there? The family doesn't stop and end with Nancy and the 3 kids, right? There's families. Think about what about the in-laws? Cameron has in-laws. Savannah has in-laws. Annie has in-laws. Nancy is a widow. She had a husband who was their brother, sisters. We were talking about it earlier on the show about, back when Nancy was being raised, a lot of people had farms. So they had 10 and 12 children, they had a lot of kids to help run that farm. How many siblings does Nancy have and how many of their families? Does anybody feel jaded in the family? Like, oh, we're never even invited now that Savannah's made this become this famous person. We're not even allowed to go hang out with them for Christmas, that kind of thing. It makes you wonder. But the reason why I'm asking, did they lose hope? Is hope lost here? Is hope lost here in this case? Because it's my understanding, and this is going to sound really horrible. And I like to play the tape through. So I already know this, what I'm about to say is probably going to rub some people the wrong way. And I can promise you that's not my intention, but there's no way to really say this other than saying it. And it's just an observation, and it's a hurtful observation, but an observation nonetheless. It sounds like this whole orchestration, this whole event that they did, outside the house to show their mom and the memorial respect. I understand why they waited. It was a spectacle out there, and them going out there and doing that with all that media there, it would have been a spectacle. Everybody would have been running up to the family. Everybody would have been sticking cameras and microphones into their face, trying to get a comment from them. They knew what was expected. They picked that opportune time. It was leading up to this time because we knew that the sheriff's trying to move media out, trying to instill some boundaries for privacy purposes, this being a famous family. Did he show them different behaviors than somebody else? I'm confident he did. I don't necessarily like it, but I don't necessarily disagree with it either, okay? Sometimes we can't have cookie cutter positions because she is famous, and it would bring a lot more people in, and so unfortunately he does have to treat this case a little differently than a no-name case, right? Just by the sheer situation that we're in. But at the end of the day, I'm hearing Savannah's going back to New York, and I know how close she was with her mom, and this is where it's going to be, people are going to probably get a little upset with me, and I say things, and I have to deal with the consequences of the statements I make too, but and it's not to be hurtful, but it's going to sound hurtful. It sounds like She's leaving before the last of the media give up on her, on the story and her mom. So I know that that's going to sound horrible, but it's not meant to be. She's heading back to New York. Can she stop her life for forever? Probably not. I'm sure this is very, very hurtful for her. I'm sure she's probably cried as much tears as she can possibly cry over this. The sheriff did that because people weren't being respectful of Nancy's house. In all honesty, I disagree with that. I didn't see anybody being disrespectful out there, but I wasn't, I wasn't watching 24/7, but who was not being respectful? I didn't see anybody going on her property. I didn't see anybody, looking through her windows. The only time anybody was there was at the very beginning when the crime scene was released, and a few journalists went up to the door to knock, and they noticed the blood, and that's what kick-started a lot of the stuff off. But news media and breaking news and being out somebody's front door is not disrespectful. It's our right. Actually, it's a protected constitutional right. But if there were people doing wrong, then they should be held accountable. Out of the principle, she shouldn't go back to the Today's Show, but that's just me. I agree. Just walking up to the property and filming the blood and everything. Well, nobody knew the blood was there until they walked up to knock on the door. That is required from journalism. When you are running a story, typically one of the things that you do, especially at a house, even if nobody's there, is you go up and you knock on the door and you try to see if anybody's in the house and if they'll be willing to talk to you. That's normal and customary in this business. It just is. But at the end of the day, you have to understand, without media, without attention on a missing child or missing person case, even elderly people, if you don't have eyes on it, the case is going to go nowhere. So there has to be some type of media. This is a breaking news case, and as you see, much like Gabby Petito's case, people just line up on along the road, and they're morning, noon, and night. So if she was reported missing before media knew, police should have seen the blood. Well, I mean, we can blame. I think everybody was a little upset that the house. Well, I think it's been reported well that public perception was the sheriff opened the crime scene up way too early. They should have been notified the family to make necessary preparations to clean that property. But I absolutely understand where you're coming from, Anna. It's a tough because you're trying to, unfortunately, news is news. So it's hard because you got a job to do, but you're still trying to be sympathetic and empathetic. Sometimes that comes across well, and sometimes it just doesn't. But I think, the one thing I can say out of this whole case with Nancy Guthrie is a lot of people came together to try to help her. A lot of people from different, right now we're in a very political part of our country. Everybody is just being nasty to one another over something so stupid. And, it's I'm glad I know it was trying to go political, but I think the rest of us just put a kibosh to it. This could have really turned into a shit show, in all fairness, because of Savannah Guthrie, because of her, interview with President Trump, all these things, the Epstein, it could have really went bad. But I think the majority of us, we weren't getting down like that. At the end of the day, this is a grandmother. This is a human being. This is a life. We are part of true crime community, and we only know how to help in these type of cases. Sometimes I get very frustrated, especially like in the Kata Scott case, where the policies of Krasner, D.A. Krasner, or State Attorney Krasner, whatever his first name is, actually got Kata killed. Like, he was the responsible party for that. I mean, granted, it was Keon King, but it was his policy that let Keon King out to do this, and then her parents are standing next to him to help him get reelected. And I just thought that turned my stomach. That turned my stomach. I stopped covering that case. But it was after we helped to try to find out what happened, and I will always stand up to help, whether I agree or disagree. Some things upset me very, very much, and so that will limit the help that I provide on something, but I will absolutely help at every opportunity that I can, if I can help. This is a case that I think more eyes on this case, just like all of our cases, always help. It's when cases die down, like right now, this case is going to die down, and it's going to be very sad, because now it's going to be years. It's going to be years. And it breaks my heart that it's going to be years, you know, for this lady to get justice, if at all. And it's sad, but I truly believe this is something that we probably may have never seen before in a crime. And it may be something very traditional, like a hit. You know, it might be very traditional, like somebody going in the house to burglarize it and rob it, and coming into the sliding glass door into her bedroom, and maybe she woke up and there was something that happened, and, you know, maybe she lost her life, and he was scared of being, you know, convicted of homicide, so he took her with him. You know, we don't know what was in this person's head, or why he was there. Why he was there is the most concerning for me, because, you know, I feel like this is personal. You know, I feel like this is ultra personal. But why? Is it somebody she knows? Because we got to look at Savannah. Savannah had just, and I keep bringing up Mark Orchard, because this is why I bring up Mark Orchard, is Mark Orchard was her ex-husband. He lives overseas. She had just talked about a toxic relationship with him almost a week prior to. And then all of a sudden, within 7 days, her mother is gone, and gone forever. Could he have ordered a hit online to some whatever that he may have known or heard about? Because he's in the biz, and trust me, when you're in the biz of producers and music stuff, you have a little, I don't know, a little more sources that can, you know, so would he be able to find somebody over here to take a hit off a Telegram or Signal or the black web, you know, something like that? I mean, it's a stretch. We have to assume that he knows how to do that, but is it possible? The answer is yes. Would that explain why it felt so personal? That would have explained, because this lady lived in the house when she was married to Mark Orchard. Let's not forget. So Mark Orchard would have had to spend, but guess what? It would have been prior to the cameras. Remember, he was shocked about the cameras, didn't know about the cameras. Could that be why this guy looks so sloppy? Was this just payback for leaving her ex-husband? I mean, we do have this whole Mike McKee from Monique and Spencer Tepe from Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. 8 years they were divorced, and then boom, he rears his ugly head. The cameras came later. Yeah, maybe that's why this guy felt comfortable on the property. Maybe he was hired on the 11th. Hired on the 11th, went over there, scoped out the property, made a plan, and returned on the 31st, 20 days later. 20 days later to her house. Would he have only been there that one time? That's pretty scary. That's pretty scary. This is the one message I do kind of have to everybody that is out there. If you have an elderly mom that is living alone, maybe if you can afford it, get her some cameras and a subscription, or have her buy the cameras and you buy the subscription, or vice versa. Because I feel like if she would have had a subscription, this case, we would know so much more. And it's sad because she came from wealth. She came from, she had the ability to subscribe and to protect herself. And this is a situation where she lived in her home for so many years. It was her sanctuary. She felt utterly safe inside that home, like many of us do. I mean, I feel utterly safe inside my home. But let me tell you, if somebody came inside my home without my permission, that would shake my understanding of what security meant. If somebody violated that trust, it'd be detrimental. We're building a senior's guest home in Mom's second lot. Aww. There's 5 empty lots, so there's plenty of room. Aw, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. Hey, Grave Crime with Grace. I didn't get your Cash App yet. I'd like to send you some money for chicken salad. I'm gonna be on this chicken salad until you let me pay for it. I'm gonna tell you that. Oh, you gotta let me pay for the chicken salad. You gotta let me pay for the chicken salad. I'm gonna go live. I'm gonna go live with my kids. Yeah, well, it sounds... I don't know why you guys would do that. You guys worked your butts off to kick them out of the nest at 18, and then you're gonna go shack up with them. I'm just gonna say, get rubber plates and plastic. I used to tease my sister. I said, I guess I'll be the one taking care of Mom and Dad. I said, well, I guess if I have to put them both in the same house, we'll just get Tupperware and plasticware so they don't kill each other. If they want to throw something, it won't poke an eye out. Oh, good gracious. Just good gracious. All right, guys. Well, I just wanted to talk about that. We're going to talk about Alex Murdaugh. I've got it down. Alex Murdaugh and good gracious, I forget his name. The American Idol murderer. He's an American Idol contestant, and he murdered his wife. And he's a pastor. I'm also hearing about an affair now, that he was having a lethal affair, that maybe this is related to some type of affair. So it looks like the pastor decided to tip his toe into some Satan stuff. And next thing you know, bada bing, bada boom, he's in jail for homicide. One of the cardinal rules that you should not do being a Christian is he salvageable. I'm sure there's going to be some plenty of clergy praying over this pastor that did something very, very bad. I don't know why people still try to commit homicide of their loved ones in America this day and age. Like, you are the very first person that is going to be looked at. If you want to your wife or your husband or your kids, you're going to be literally... Caleb Flynn, thank you, baby love. You're literally going to be the very first person everyone looks at. There's no getting away with it. Unless you're Katie and Chris Proudfoot and live in Sumner County, then you got, the top of brass always pushing the case the other way so he doesn't have to arrest his friends or tell the world how much of a piece of garbage his friends are. It's going to be 20 years before Sebastian gets justice on a very straightforward case. But what can you say? We got Tennessee, which knows how to arrest sober drivers for DUI. That's where we are at in Tennessee. They're so good, they arrest sober drivers for DUI in Tennessee. That's how good they are. And again, remember, Christopher and Katie said that I threatened them with a gun online. I said I was going to pew-pew them. And all these detectives had to do was go turn on a screen and find out and research my account to find out if that ever happened. It couldn't have been any simpler. And they couldn't do that. And the investigators that couldn't investigate me are the ones that can't investigate Sebastian. So we got a whole lot of dumbasses up there doing absolutely squat on all these cases. But one thing you know is if you're driving sober, you're probably going to jail. If you don't commit a crime, you're probably going to jail. But you abuse a child or murder a child in Sumner County, you're probably going to get to go home and lay your head down in your bed that night and stay there for a good long while, because it seems to me that Tennessee likes to arrest a bunch of non-criminals and let the criminals go. Wow, that sounds like every blue state that I've seen so far and their corrupt policies where they don't protect the people. You know, they got people out there going, ee, 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 ee. And they're like, oh, wow, you stabbed somebody, but you didn't kill them, so we're going to let you go on out again, okay? Yeah, when you kill them, we'll just come on back in and we'll make you a bed then, okay? All right. Bye, criminal. You have a great time out there on those streets. Oh, we got your knife. Hold on. Come back here. We got to give you your knife back. We got to give you your knife back. Here you go, sir. Have a great day. Courtesy of Tennessee and North Carolina. Melania's done. I hope so. It's not Tommaso. Tommaso has a huge beard. I know, I pointed that out a long time ago. We know that person, the masked person, wasn't Tommaso. I think everybody in my chat, but they knew it had to be Tommaso or Annie so bad that no matter who that person was, they were going to try to link it back to them. And quite frankly, I never got on board with them. I'm telling you guys, I've been doing this a while, and you guys know how deep research I do. You know, there's stuff I can't talk about that we do. But, you know, for the most part, I never really got down with it. I never got down with it because I know criminals. You know, sometimes they do, you know, I may be inaccurate, but for the most part, I know criminals. We know bad people. We see bad people. I'm not getting the vibe of Annie and Tommaso. I'm not vibing with it. I'm not vibing that they've been taking care of their mother for almost 20 years, and now all of a sudden today they're going to And it's like, well, they were broke. That's an assumption. You have no earthly idea what their finances are. And if you do, please produce them. I'll keep them confidential. Send them to bullhornbetty@gmail.com. You know, there used to be receipts that we had to, instead of just jumping on somebody because it sounded good. You know, you can't make statements like they're having financial problems. If they're having financial problems, it will be very noticeable. Very noticeable. So, are we really having financial problems, or is that what somebody's trying to say to justify why they need their mom gone? You see what I'm saying? Because this is how I'm feeling about the situation. And again, this is just, you know, based upon law enforcement clearing all the people involved. I'm not clearing the people involved. Law enforcement did that. I'm just saying that there's obviously nothing here that's supporting that they did anything other than our feeling that they did. And sometimes, and I said this when this case broke, sometimes truth is crazier than fiction. And this is one of those cases, and I said it specifically on this case because sometimes I just have a hunch, a gut feeling that something is going to be much different than what we all think it is. I made this assessment in the Idaho 4 case, and I was absolutely accurate. First off, in this case here, I said the exact same thing, and so far that has panned out. This is going to be something we're not looking at. This is going to be somebody we're not even discussing. This is somebody we're not even discussing. You know why? Because we're too focused on Annie and Tommaso. We're too focused on Annie and Tommaso. We need to get away from them, and we need to go back to the case, and we need to find another person that fits. There's more people that fit. And then we still can't dismiss, and I heard that JLR was going to go pull some public records. I thought he said he was going to do it today. But I would really like to start seeing some of those public records out, because I think that those public records, you know, we need to find out what type of crime's going on in this area. Who's been in this area in the most recent time? How many people have cameras on their house with no subscription, and this guy could have been by 15 or 20 different houses. Has anybody looked at has this guy, this is one thing that nobody's asked the sheriff, has this guy showed up on anybody else's surveillance as walking around their house? And why would that be important? Because it tells you he's trying to identify a house, and that would go to him not having really a connection to Miss Guthrie. If he's scoping out several houses and walks up to several houses, and then ultimately this is the one he attacks, then it's telling us that he looked around, figured out which house he wanted to target, and that might go into the robbery gone wrong aspect if we find some details like that, because that would be more in line, in my opinion, with behaviors of a burglar and robbery. So yeah, I've wondered that too. Exactly. Because those things aren't being talked about. How many times has this man showed up because remember, they asked for all these cameras in. And so how about if this guy showed up on the cameras next door? Did they do this type of residual footage for other people's houses nearby her to see if maybe they picked up something, if they didn't have a subscription but also had cameras? I mean, I know this is asking a lot of Google, but if there's a way to capture that, if there's a way to even capture what the neighbors may have heard, what their cameras may have picked up, you got to remember a lot of these cameras have sound to them too. We only got still footage and a video with no sound. So we don't know what he's saying. Was he talking to somebody? He looks back as he's pulling that up. Is he looking for something else? Or is he out there screaming to somebody, telling them, there's a camera here. I got to take care of it. Hold by, stand by. We'll get in a different way. Let me check this out. Let me check this out. You don't know what he's saying. But at one point, it does look like he turns and he says something kind of behind him as he's reaching and picking those weeds up. Yes, I got a new set today. No more Nest. They have audio, but it's not saved without a subscription. I personally like Blink. I've got a sync card in my house. Actually, the sync card, I might just change this, but right now I do have a sync card somewhere in my house for all of my cameras, and they record, and I can store cameras up to almost a month on that sync card. A month. A solid month. With all the phones. Or excuse me, all the cameras. So, and if you want to, you can buy multiple of those cards and stick them around and have several cameras only on one card. So if, say, a burglar came in, they found the one sync card, they would think that was it. And you have another one like in a closet or covered up somewhere or something like that, and now you have a sync card somewhere else. That's pretty interesting. And some people, I'm going to tell you guys this, some people have plugs and hardwire in their attic to run like fans to keep their attic cooler, or something like that. It helps keep the overall house cooler by having an attic fan. So, there might be something like that where you have electric up in your attic, and that sync card could literally be hidden in your attic. That would be interesting. So I just wanted to give you guys some thoughts, because I know security is important, but not only security. If you can't afford subscriptions, there are things out there so you don't have to pay a monthly fee. I'm cheap, okay? If you know anything about me, I'm a cheap bitch. Excuse my language, but that's exactly what my best friend calls me. And that's exactly what I am. I budget everything. That's how I've been able to do all the stuff I've been able to do is budget. I don't like monthly fees. So I like paid off houses, paid off cars, paid off. I don't like credit cards. Every now and again, you got to have a little credit. But I'd prefer not having monthly payments. So if I have an option to have a sync card versus a subscription, I would pay $100 or $200 for that sync card just to avoid 10 years of subscriptions. You know what I'm saying? So I love that. Mama was a thrifter. Yep. So that's just where I'm at. You know, this life is very expensive. And so I want to have certain things, but I realize we have to spend a little bit of money, but if we can try to cut down on costs, but let's face it, there's a lot of people in my chat that can't afford swap and deserve to have security. So I'm trying to teach you guys cheap ways of getting yourself secure. I think the whole setup for the Ring doorbell camera and the sync card cost me, I want to say like $80. And granted, that is a lot of money this day and age. $80 is $80. That's my water bill, actually, nowadays, which is insanity. Insanity. Good gracious. Just to freaking drink water. $80 a month. Unbelievable. Anyways. So I realize it's $80, but you know what? You set $10 aside for the next 8 months. That's how you do it. How do you do it? One bite at a time, folks. One bite at a time. You don't need to be a rock star or a millionaire. Just start saving. Just start putting a little bit aside. Some of you guys may only have a few dollars to save aside every month. Save it. If you can scrimp and save $5, save it. You know, there's no need to go spend it all. So that's my suggestion. If you're worried about your security and you want some security cameras, you can get some stuff that has the cards in them, or you can get like Blink that doesn't have, that you can do subscription or non-subscription and do the sync card. I like the sync card, personally speaking. I use it. I love it. Okay. Now, granted, I haven't been ripped out of my home or from my bed in the middle of the night by a masked gunman that has most likely taken my life. But you know, hopefully if something like that does happen, it's obviously not going to stop or prevent me from dying. But at least it might benefit the detectives that are investigating my crime and hopefully help them find who did this to me quicker. And you know, it's a preventative thing, but it doesn't mean it's going to stop something bad from happening to you. It's a camera. So all we can hope for is if something bad does happen, it'll help solve the problem. So anyways, that's kind of where we're at with it. I want to thank you all for coming out and listening to it. I'm glad Savannah got to say, you know, bye to her mom. And it's so sad because you heard them sobbing. You heard them sobbing, and that had to have been so blessed hard. That broke my heart. That really did. It broke my heart because I keep thinking, you know, about my mom, what I would do. And you know, I've got a past. I got stuff, and somebody would probably sit here and try to club me over the head and say I did something to my mom. Let me tell you something. I don't believe that there's any reason to go to jail, like homicide or anything like that. But there is one thing when it comes to my family. When it comes to my family, somebody hurting my family, injuring my family, causing bodily harm to my family, there are a few things that I would be willing to go to jail for. Just a few. But it's not over you disrespecting me. It's not over. It's not over a lot of things. But you mess with my family, you bet your ass that's something I'm willing to go to jail for. And with me saying that, it's because if something happened to my mom, because of my history, people might be coming over here trying to say I had something to do with my mama. And I tell you what, there ain't no way in hell. There ain't no way in HE double hockey sticks. There's no way. Absolutely none. So I have to consider that. And not only that, my history is a hell of a lot worse than these folks' history. Okay? I don't believe that Tommaso did this. I don't believe Annie is involved. I believe they chose to stay back and take care of their mother. Now, even if she tried to sell her house or that, I believe that was a family decision. Okay? I truly believe it was a family decision because they have an elderly mother. There's 3 kids. 2 of them are doing very well. The other one's doing semi-well. But but you got to remember, she sold a book. She's got music. She's got a studio. She's making jewelry. I mean, you're not talking about people that are broke here. I mean, from my understanding, they've had the studio for years. People that have financial problems have hard times keeping those things afloat for years. Their house of cards typically come crumbling down. especially after the first 5 years. The first year to 5 years are always the hardest part of any new business. But once you survive that, you pretty much are set up to withstand a lot. So we've got to take a lot of other elements into consideration when looking at Tommaso and Annie. And do I know whether they're involved? I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not this dude. I don't know why he was there, and I don't know why Nancy is missing. But law enforcement is telling us they're not involved, and at some point, and this is a joint task force with the FBI would have never let Pima County Sheriff put that statement out if they all did not agree. Period. That's all there is to it. I know how this works, and I know that statement would have never been released if they didn't all agree. So this is not just Pima County saying it. This is the FBI saying it as well. And I've got to take that into consideration. And until new information that might point to them to say they may have had something to do with it, I've got to remove them as a possibility because it's blinding me. Okay? It's blinding me. There's somebody that's out there that did this. We need to find that person. It's not Annie and it's not Tommaso. So now we need to figure out who it is. Someone online said that Nancy had remortgaged her house multiple times. Does anybody know if that's true? That's not what I heard. I think that's a telephone issue there. What we heard is that she put the house up for sale. Like October 2024, and then within 5 months, Annie and Tommaso had purchased their home, and people were implying that Annie must have decided to buy that whole house for Nancy to come live with her, and then Nancy decided she didn't want to live with her and wanted to stay. Those are all subjective and people's assumptions. None of that has ever come out. None of that is anything that, in my opinion, can be proven. And who are these people saying it? If they're not directly in ties with the family, how do they know this? Where are their receipts? Because we need to start holding people accountable for what they say. Do they have receipts for the nonsense that they're pushing on these social media platforms, or do they not? If they've got receipts, we should all have them. I know I love receipts. I love reviewing documents. I love reviewing a lot of stuff. And I haven't reviewed any financial documents for them. I haven't reviewed multiple mortgage applications for them. This is all public record. This is all in usually land records of some sort. They have to show the mortgage on the property. They have to show when the mortgage was done. So I don't think, these things can be identified fairly quickly. Maybe I'll take a look at it because I understand it. I used to sell real estate property. I used to do mortgages. I used to do everything related to land and land transfer. So maybe this is something that I'll take a look at, and just because I understand it without a doubt. I did it for 10 years, right? I worked for about 25 years before I came here to this, and maybe a little more, maybe 28 years, something like that, before I came to YouTube. 10 to 15 years of that was working for lawyers, and 10 or 15 years of that, probably 10 or 15 years of that was working for real estate and mortgages. And then of course, 5 or so years was doing other stuff, accounting, medical stuff I didn't really stay into very long. I think I stayed in accounting for 4 years, something like that. So however that all works out to this 20 some year work, whatever. I did a lot of stuff, and that had a lot to do with just me getting burnt out. Because when I go into places, I work really, really, really hard, and then I burn out, and then I work really, really hard. And that's why this content creation is good for me, because they're different cases. We never really have the same case, so it's always making me, want to do better and do better research and figure out these cases and stuff like that. But when I saw this case, I knew, for whatever reason, this case, in my gut, my hunch told me that this is not going to be a straightforward case. And it's been anything but straightforward. Now, part of that I have to blame on the sheriff himself. I don't think a whole lot of us are too happy with the sheriff and his handling of this case in the public light. We're praying to God that he's done better, since this massive debacle. But I have a funny feeling Savannah is going to be leaving to go back to New York, and I have a funny feeling JLR and Brian Enton and Mike Ruiz are going to still be out there covering this case while every sibling's back home except Annie and Tommaso. Annie and Tommaso are going to have to face this all by themselves. Just seems so unfair, especially after Ashley Banfield threw Tommaso under the bus and he has never been able to get his head out from under it. And that's sad, because I truly don't believe he did this, and I believe he's grieving his mother-in-law. I believe he was a great son-in-law. I think they just cared. Everybody's like, why did he drive him home, not just Uber her home? Well, it was late at night. He probably didn't want her in a car with a stranger at night. Booked another week. Wow. I don't know if I would have done that, but, to each their own. He always has a keen sense of something. I wonder if it's going to pan out. Please, someone tell where Nancy is. I know, right? We need to have Nancy home. We need to have Nancy home. Be honest with you, I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken because I hate being right. I knew she was dead. I knew she was going to lose her life. I hate being right about that because it makes me feel icky. No matter how old your parent is when they lose their life, even of natural causes, you're never prepared. And to have your parent ripped out of their bed in the sanctity of their home, to never see them again, never have that closure, never know what happened, that unknown, that makes people lose their mind. It makes people lose their ever-loving mind. It's sad. Guys, would you do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button? And also, if you're on the replay crew, consider hyping this live for me. We're just kind of having a very casual conversation. Occasionally, I'll do a studio topic showing you a bunch of stuff. And then there's other times where I just want to come here. It's a little easier sometimes when I'm relaxing or whatever, just to get some stuff out. As you guys can see, I'm in office 2. You can always tell office 2 because I have pillows behind me. That means I'm in my room. We have office 3, which is the living room and the kitchen. But office 1 is usually where we do our best work, and office 2 is second best. Sometimes when there's a breaking case and I work, I work, I sleep, I wake up, work, sleep, wait. I will have this whole bed covered with stuff, and we will just go live. We could go live at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm researching like that. So we've had some crazy times on this channel, that's for sure. But I do like the one-on-ones that we get from the vertical stream. If she has passed, they could let the family lay her to rest. That's why this is something different. I just feel this is something different. The whole laying to rest thing, that's what makes me feel like this was something to do with Savannah, to hurt Savannah. I mean, I could be wrong, of course. It's just one theory of many theories. At this point, I think we're up to 4 or 5 different theories. We had 7. I know we moved one of them. I think we lost 2 or 3. So we were down to 4 or 5 different theories now. I got to go back and write down all the theories again, or find my notes on all the theories we had. But a lot of the theories we had at the beginning have changed because we've seen the masked gunman. And everything from that masked gunman on has just been so confusing to understand. Like, why? Just the sheer why factor. We don't understand the why. Just don't understand the why. All right, guys, listen. Tomorrow's going to be a little different. I'm going to try and get up and do a live very early in the morning. I've got to be at the county by 9 a.m., which I usually get there about 8:30. So we're going to have to start at 6. If you guys do not see me before 8 a.m., I'm not doing a live until I get back from the meeting. So does anyone know where Nancy is? I don't think anybody knows where she is. They keep saying they feel like she's right around there. And if they keep saying that they feel like she's right around there, then that means they think that it's a common criminal that lives nearby. I just don't think that's what we're dealing with. I'm watching, all these little cold case documentaries, and you know how I don't believe a lot of people will travel a long ways with a body. That is true for most people. But there are still plenty of statistics that say people travel hundreds of miles to dump a body or to do whatever. So I have a funny feeling we can't dismiss that in this case. And one last thing I'm going to state is I truly believe that what we're going to find out is going to be much like Bryan Kohberger, where this assailant turned off their phone. And they turned off their phone during this time and turned it back on during this time, but have never done that previously or before. That is going to be, I think, the nail in the coffin for the subject that has done this to Nancy. It's going to be, like I said, I feel like there's a lot, and that's me saying it out loud just taking me down another avenue that I wasn't exploring before, because I'm like, they Bryan Kohbergered this case. This is like a Bryan Kohberger case almost 2.0 in that respect of where I feel like this is going to be somebody just out in left field. And it makes you wonder, is this going to be like maybe a Savannah stalker? I can't think of any other reason. Her family, everything I'm reading and seeing behind the scenes here, folks, that family loved each other. So who would do this to Nancy? It's either a psychopath or a distant relative. And I'm starting to feel, more and more, I keep saying this is really starting to sound a lot like Bryan Kohberger, with the exception of at least Bryan left the victims there. It makes me wonder, is it a crazed psychopath? That I have not put into an equation because I felt it was so personal. But if I remember back with the Idaho 4, that felt really personal too. That felt really personal too, and it wasn't. It was a stalker. That's why it felt so personal. This could be the same type of situation. Just something to think about, guys. I know it's easy. Tommaso's low-hanging fruit, but I just don't think he's the guy. Law enforcement certainly doesn't think he's the guy. I've never really gotten on board with that, folks. Go back and look, because I always kept correcting people. Somebody like, you'll hear me go back to the beginning. You'll hear me say maybe somebody like Tommaso. I even said multiple times, I'm not really on board with this. I talked about these things because they were relevant. They deserve to be talked about. The angles deserve to be had on this platform, without a doubt. But I also was very clear on my position, how I wasn't really digging Tommaso being the subject even before the assailant was seen. I don't know why. It just didn't fit for me. It really didn't. So, yeah, I only thought that because there's a lot of reasons. It was a great thing. He was the last person to see her. He dropped her off. We look for the last people to see him. That's what we look for. But there was just something about this story, even before we saw the masked gunman, it didn't fit for me. When I looked, and I think it had a lot to do with, I do a lot of background search and research when it comes to subjects. So for Annie and Tommaso, I did a lot of, researching in them. And everything I saw was just salt of the earth, hippie. You don't really meet a lot of hippies that are violent and willing to take somebody out. They're actually just the opposite. And these two people seem like the hippies of the family, in all fairness. That's just how I feel about them. And so when I was researching and reviewing them, that was the vibe I was getting. And that type of vibe does not go with the homicidal freak. You know, it takes a special person to be a homicidal freak. Sometimes it can be a normal person that just has a lot of the perfect storm of elements, if you will, that turns a good person into a killer. But for this, I don't know why I never really felt it was Tommaso or Annie. I have to believe it's because of my research, but I don't know why I never, it was hard for me to entertain that, and I don't know why. But I'm glad we did discuss it, and I'm glad that because I kept saying it's going to break my heart if we find out it's one of the family members. It's going to break my heart if we find out if it's one of the family members. I remember just keep saying that, and we're here where they've been cleared, and it's like, I'm so thankful in part. I want the person being found, but I'm glad they're truly cleared, because it was going to break my heart if I found out it was one of them. In all reality, that's awful. That's awful. But let me put this in perspective. Do you guys know who Jennifer Hudson is? She was on the American Idol. She ended up becoming a really major contender in music, and she's got a very, very soulful voice and stuff. You guys do remember that? Okay, well, her entire family was executed. I don't know if you guys knew that. And this was after she rose to fame. Her sister's fiance ended up taking out almost the entire family. And that was very, truly, deeply painful and personal to Jennifer Hudson. But it goes to show you that, yes, we understand it is most likely somebody very, very close. But it doesn't always mean it's the loving part of the family. That was a person that had broken up with her sister, I believe, or they were going through a divorce or something like that. I don't remember all of the details, but it was well known that there was something wrong with this person. We're not seeing that here, but could it be somebody in the family, like a cousin, or like just, another person, or even a family member's ex-boyfriend? What about the cousin's ex-boyfriend that the whole family last year called the cops and had him trespassed off the property? Those are the things that we don't know. And I think that's going to be important. That's why I'm very excited if JLR does go down and get public records. I'd like to know what was going on in that community. If I'm familiar with his work, he's going to be looking at that home, incidences around that home, as well as several incidents several miles from that home, to try to get an overall view of what was going on in that community prior to her disappearance, if my memory serves me correctly. So we'll see what is produced if he does. He's got the whole week. I see it's settling down in front of Nancy Guthrie's house. It looks like Savannah's going back to New York, so it seems like he has a whole week to do some investigative journalism out there and getting some public records and stuff like that. So I'm super stoked about what might be produced over this next week that might help at least hone in on how much problems Nancy was truly going through. When was the last time she called cops to her house? Has there been any cops called to her house in the last 5 years, the last decade? And if so, what were the reasons for those calls? And what about, Annie too? Did we ever think that maybe Annie or Tommaso, maybe one of their, I know we were looking at his bandmate, but that bandmate's too old, okay? What we're seeing out there is a much younger person. They move much younger. I can't imagine the person that's out there on that front step with that pistol in his belt loop. I can't imagine that person being more than 30 years old, okay? I don't see a 56-plus-year-old man out there acting like that. I really don't. I could be totally wrong. It's just my opinion. But it looks like no matter how hard we're praying for this case, a miracle's not coming to fruition, at least not now. Will that change? I hope. I hope. I hope. Anyways, guys, rock it out with your coffee beans out. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. Don't forget to hype this live. Don't forget to like this live. Don't forget to comment on this live. Let me know what you think. Who has done this to Nancy? Friend or foe or third party unknown to this family? Is this a hit? Is this a hired individual? What was the motivation? Let me know in the comments section or send me an email. bullhornbetty@gmail.com. That's bullhornbetty@gmail.com. I am interested in hearing from you. This is quite the case. Tomorrow afternoon, when I'm wrapped up with my meeting, I am going, which I'm not going to stay long because I'm highly hurt. I'm going to try to keep my frustration and anger in check tomorrow. But you know me, I have a pop mouth. That means I'm probably going to tell somebody to get bent tomorrow. I'm not sure who that's going to be. Yeah, I am. Oh, yeah, I am. And I'm a time and a place person. I'm not going to have some fake people acting like, I don't know, acting like they cared about her when they treated her like shit every time she was there. Okay? She was my friend, and I'm going to represent her as if she's my friend. She's now in a grave. And people treated her like shit. What goes around comes around. So when I treat you like shit, just remember why. That's all I got to say. And that goes for our damn employees too. That goes for our damn employees too. So I'm frustrated, you know. I'll figure it out, you know. I'll get there and I'll feel the vibe. I'll get there and I'll feel the vibe. But I just don't see myself sitting there and acting, you know, acting like these people really care for her. Like Tal won't even let us do a tribute to her, like this video that somebody put together. He said no. He said no. Oh, he can do proclamations and rewards for the people in our staff, but not for a county commissioner. He's such a dick. And I tell you, if you're in the state of Florida or you're in this district, do not vote for his wife. And I mean that. Do not vote for that man's wife. We see what his leadership is, and it's to stop people's First Amendment rights. So I have to think his wife is much like him and not good for Manatee County. So that's going to be our position. She is going to be bad. We cannot have her husband as the chairman and her being in our house. Absolutely not. That is not going to be a winner in this county for me. All right, guys. We'll see you soon. God bless.